My name is Charlotte Hayes. I used to believe that if you worked hard enough, someone would eventually notice. But in the end, it wasn't ambition that erased me. It was my sister. With a click, a list, and a smile she's been rehearsing since we were 12. They called it a scheduling mix-up. I called it what it was. Precision sabotage in a silk blouse. But what she didn't know? I kept the email. The logs. The lines of code she thought no one would trace. I didn't come back to beg. I came back with a flash drive and a witness. Before I show you how the room shifted, how the company she built on silence started listening for the first time, tell me where you're watching from. And share this if you've ever been quietly pushed aside, but came back prepared. The air inside the 32nd floor conference room smelled like cold steel and bergamot. Everything about Clearwell Analytics whispered control, from the immaculate glass table to the precisely poured lattes now making their way around the room. Except to me. Mine never came. I sat at the far end, spine straight, hands folded. Across the table, Madison moved like she belonged here, sweeping across the floor in her ink-black suit, high heels tapping a metronome of power. She scanned the candidates like a hawk sizing up its prey. Her gaze never touched me. She hadn't changed much. Her hair was shorter, slicked back, but the precision in her smile, the choreography of her cruelty, that was all the same. 3 years ago, my sister erased my name from a pitch deck, and no one asked where I went. Today, she stood before me as the lead on this hiring panel. Not even a flicker of recognition in her eyes. Not for the girl who once saved her from academic suspension. Not for the sister who stayed silent when Madison presented my research as hers in front of our mother. I swallowed the taste in my mouth. It wasn't bitterness. It was something colder, older. Madison clapped once, sharply. Welcome, everyone. I'm Madison Hayes, Director of Strategic Solutions here at Clearwell. I'll be overseeing this round. No one blinked. Of course they wouldn't. She sounded like someone who owned the place. Beside her, Trent Lawson, the HR director with the sharp navy suit and the sharper jawline, smiled like a man who already knew the winners. We'll begin with a logic assessment, he said. We've selected 5 candidates for this stage. He opened a folder and began to read. Marissa Cole, Tanvi Patel, Elijah Brooks, Danny Chen, Oliver Eng. He closed the folder. That was it. I blinked. There had to be a mistake. I had the confirmation, the email. I'd replied. I'd booked the slot. A few of the others exchanged awkward glances. I felt their eyes brush over me, wondering who the extra chair belonged to. Madison didn't look at me, but I saw the smallest twitch in her lips. There, then gone. Excuse me, I said, standing. I believe there's been an error. I received confirmation for this morning's session. Trent turned toward me with that HR smile, friendly but hollow. Your name? Charlotte Hayes. Madison's lashes fluttered. Oh? She said, tilting her head like she'd just heard something odd. I don't recall seeing you on the revised list. Did you perhaps sign up through the external portal? There it was, measured condescension dipped in silk. No, I replied, voice level. I was added last week through the internal referral path. I have the email. Madison's lips twitched again, almost like a smile. Huh. Sometimes admin forgets to sync the calendar updates. I'll double-check with them, but we do need to start. We have very limited time slots. She turned to Trent. Shall we proceed? And just like that, the conversation moved on without me. The other candidates followed Trent out of the room one by one. Vanessa Kim, the quiet analyst from 2 rows over, offered a half-apologetic glance as she stood. She knew me. She remembered the Hayes name, but she said nothing. I stayed seated. Madison finally turned toward me. Maybe the industry isn't built for soft hearts, Charlotte. It was the first time she said my name out loud, like a challenge. I didn't reply. My gaze locked on hers. My silence was not surrender. It was a study, a stillness that knew something she didn't. You built this game, Madison, but you forgot. I watched you write the rules. She lingered a moment, expecting me to break. I didn't. I waited until the door closed behind her. Then I reached into my bag. My fingers wrapped around the edge of my phone. The screen lit up. I opened my backup email, scrolled quickly, and there it was. Your interview with Clearwell Analytics is confirmed. Monday, 9 a.m. Sent last Tuesday. Marked red. I took a breath, exhaled slowly. You deleted me from the list, but I still brought a pen. They thought I'd leave quietly. They forgot I don't knock twice. I break the lock. The 18th floor was colder. Not in temperature, but in purpose. Gone were the polished smiles and curated perfumes from upstairs. Here, silence hummed through motionless air vents, and cameras blinked slowly from corners of the ceiling. I stepped into the test room, flashing the backup badge HR had emailed me that morning. The proctor, a thin man with rimless glasses and the air of someone who memorized procedure more than practiced it, looked me up and down. "You're not on the printout," he said. I kept my tone neutral. "HR confirmed 10 minutes ago. Check your inbox. I've got the thread too if you need." He didn't ask for it, just muttered something under his breath and tapped at his tablet. A minute later, a new name appeared in his list. Charlotte Hayes, added manually. Time-stamped 12:46 p.m. "Take table 6, he said. "Keep your bag sealed, phone off. You'll have 90 minutes. Two other candidates sat across the room. One wore oversized headphones, bobbing slightly to whatever soundtrack powered his math. The other chewed a pencil like it was going to fight back. Neither looked up when I entered. Daniel once asked me, "If they never open the door, will you still build the house?" I said yes. The terminal screen glowed to life with the test prompt. Nonlinear systems analysis. Anomaly detection in probabilistic datasets. Bias assessment in evolving AI models. It was everything I used to do before Madison decided only one of us should get credit. I read through the dataset like scanning a familiar skyline. Within minutes, I spotted the patterns. Where others might drown in the math, I heard rhythm, like chords waiting to be resolved. I wrote quickly, efficiently. I didn't pause to second guess. This wasn't new to me. This was mine. Somewhere around minute 35, I opened a sub-window in the code suite and inserted a module from 2022. It was an optimization algorithm, developed by me, stolen by Madison, and buried after she scrubbed my credentials. But she hadn't known I kept the Git logs on a flash drive. She hadn't expected I'd ever come back with version history intact. I added a single line inside the module. Contributor ID, Che_2022, V.16. Archived buried, but unmistakable. A breadcrumb. My fingers moved steadily. As I neared the end, I noticed the proctor staring. Not watching for cheating, watching me. Noticing how I never glanced around, how I didn't need a scratch pad. He came to collect the sheet with a faint crease in his brow. "You don't look like someone they forgot by accident," he said quietly. I gave a small smile. "I don't think they did." I slipped my phone from my sealed bag as soon as I left the room. Tucked in the side pocket, the recorder blinked silently. I tapped to review the last few minutes. Static. Chair scrape. Then the receptionist's voice from earlier. "She's not on the original list, ma'am. Are you sure we're allowed to?" Another voice. HR's assistant. "I have the time-stamped edition. It's authorized. Send her in." Perfect clarity. Clear as evidence. I tucked the device back in. They'll tear it again. But this time I'm ready to watch them do it. And press record. There's a particular silence in boardrooms, right before someone gets replaced. It wasn't the first time I'd felt it. The last time, I had left that silence behind with a cardboard box and a bruised sense of self-worth. No one asked where I was going. No one said goodbye. They just rearranged their chairs and kept talking like I never existed. But this time, I didn't wait to be called in. I pushed the door open and stepped into the lion's mouth with my head held high. Madison stood near the whiteboard, perfectly poised in a navy silk blouse, gesturing to something on her laptop while Trent hovered nearby, his face already wrinkled with irritation at the sound of the door. A few others turned to look, confused but not alarmed. The recruiters, the allies she'd bought. I didn't say a word. Just walked to the end of the long glass table, placed the USB drive and 2 paper folders in front of me, and sat down. Calmly, deliberately. Madison blinked. Just once. But her expression reset before the room could catch it. "Charlotte," Trent started, tone clipped. "I think you're in the wrong—" I'm exactly where I should be. My voice was quiet, but it stopped him. "Everything you need to see is in there." He opened his mouth again, perhaps to call security. Madison cut in, softer this time. "Charlotte, we're in the middle of something. It's not professional to just—" "You can review it now," I said, meeting her eyes. "Or review it later, with your legal team." A hush settled like snow. For a moment, no one moved. And then the door behind me opened again. Footsteps, slow, measured, echoed in the high-ceilinged room. Daniel Everett walked in wearing a tailored charcoal suit and an expression carved from marble. He didn't acknowledge anyone. Not Madison, not Trent, not the dozen board members seated in their assigned spots. He walked straight to me and, without hesitation, kissed me lightly on the cheek. My heartbeat didn't spike. I had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. But Madison went white. "Thank you," Daniel said under his breath, just for me to hear. I nodded once. He turned to the room. "I'm here," he said clearly, "because this company is on the brink of a serious ethics violation, and you've already failed the first test." Silence reigned again, but now it was different. Heavy. Loaded. Trent looked like he had swallowed a paperclip. One of the recruiters dropped her pen. Vanessa Kim tilted her head slightly, studying me with fresh eyes. "And Madison?" She didn't say a word. Her nails dug into her arm, but she didn't speak. In the far corner, someone whispered, "She's his fiancée?" Madison took a step back. Her eyes locked on mine. Not in surprise anymore, but in recognition. The kind that comes too late. Daniel didn't flinch. He placed a hand on the folder I'd brought and opened it slowly, page by page. I knew what he would find. Code logs, contributor history, deleted Git timestamps, voice recordings, email threads. Pieces of a truth Madison had buried with a smile and a promotion. Now the board would see the full mosaic. I remembered what Daniel had said one night, long before any of this started. "I'm silent not because I don't care, but because you said, 'Let me earn this.'" And I had. You can silence someone in meetings, but not when they bring their own microphone. The boardroom was colder than usual that morning. Not because of the thermostat, but because every seat was filled with faces trained to stay neutral. Daniel sat at the head of the table, his eyes unreadable. Madison was already seated when I walked in, her polished nails gripping a notebook too tightly for someone not nervous. I placed my phone gently on the table, screen down. No greeting, no smile, just presence. The silence pressed like a pane of glass before it shattered. "I'd like to start with a recording," I said, without raising my voice. I tapped once and the playback began. Trent's voice, clipped and clear, filled the room. "Yeah, her name wasn't on the list Madison submitted. I mean, someone had to trim down candidates. HR doesn't question what the execs decide." There was a murmur. Madison's pen stopped mid-stroke. "That's taken out of context," she said quickly, her tone sharp but strained. We were streamlining. "You all saw how many applications came in." "You deleted one candidate's name after the confirmation email was sent," Vanessa interjected. She had barely spoken before today. "There's a process, and you broke it." "I've brought something else," I said, sliding a printout across the table. This is from our 2022 research prototype. Final draft. The code that powered our first predictive module. I paused. Please check the contributor metadata. Daniel took the paper, and after a moment, he looked up. Charlotte Hayes, 3 commits, all gone from the current archive. Madison crossed her arms, her voice rising. That project had multiple iterations. We scrub old code to streamline development. It's standard practice. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Scrubbing a person's name isn't standard, especially not when the same person has receipts. I tapped again. A forwarded internal email flashed onto the screen. Before this goes to final review, remove Charlotte's name from all versions. She's not aligned with our future vision. Sender, Madison Hayes. A beat of silence. Madison stood. This is absurd. I'm not going to sit here and be interrogated like I'm on trial. But before she could reach the door, Daniel's voice cut across the room. If you leave, your silence becomes your signature. Her heel froze mid-step. I didn't look at her. I didn't need to. The board had seen enough to start drawing their own conclusions. I sat back. Finally. The vibration came soft. A buzz from my phone. One new message. Unknown at clearwellint.net subject. She's not done. Body. You think she's won this round? Wait until she leaks the real proposal. Backup folder still exists. I stared at it, then looked up. The game wasn't over. Madison always kept an escape hatch. And this time, she wasn't walking through it. She was planning to blow it open. Madison couldn't win fairly, so she did what cowards do. She twisted truth into poison. The email hit just after sunrise. The subject line was simple. Favoritism or fraud? But the content was anything but. Screenshots, misquoted emails, cropped photos from old social events. None of it damning alone, but strung together with enough implication to make anyone raise an eyebrow. Charlotte didn't flinch. She read every word of it while sipping black coffee in the internal comms office. Her silence wasn't weakness. It was calculation. Just outside her door, whispers floated. Some staff looked away when they passed her desk. Others offered a glance that tried to say, I believe you, but stopped short of anything useful. Daniel entered without knocking. It's moving fast, he said, placing a tablet on the desk. Over 300 views already on the internet thread. Legal flagged 3 HRS who reshared it internally. Charlotte nodded. She's not just trying to break me. She wants to break the perception of me. Neera Patel, the PR manager, leaned into the doorway. This isn't just a leak. It's a campaign. The timestamps, they line up too perfectly. Someone built this overnight. And they didn't sign it, Charlotte added. Cowards never do. They had until noon before the next department-wide meeting, the one Madison was counting on to let the whispers fester. Charlotte stood, brushed off her blazer, and pulled out a thin folder. Then I'll go first. No press release. Just presence. In the open space on the 21st floor, Charlotte addressed the operations team. No stage, no podium, just her, standing on level ground. Some of you may have seen what's been passed around, she began. You know my face. Some of you know my work, but few of you know the steps between the two. She laid it out simply. The years she worked anonymously under Madison's projects, the deleted credits, the test she wasn't supposed to take, the internal recordings, and the legacy code still bearing her signature. Each point backed by time-stamped evidence. I didn't ask for favoritism. I asked for fairness. And when that failed, I built my own way back. There was a pause, then Daniel stepped forward. To be clear, Charlotte and I have not worked together, not once, in any capacity for over 2 years. That was her request. She didn't want the shadow of proximity. She wanted the clarity of merit. Neera passed around printed copies of Charlotte's HR timeline. A few team leads flipped through it, frowning at what they saw. Charlotte didn't stop. I know what it means to be underestimated. to be erased. But I also know this: visibility is not the same as value, and you can't delete someone who never stopped building. When she closed the folder, the room was quiet. Then came the slow sound of fingers tapping keyboards, phones lighting up, heads turning, not away, but toward her. The tide had started shifting. At her desk, an hour later, Charlotte's screen blinked with a new message from HR. Subject: Ethics Review Confirmation, Friday, 9 a.m., mandatory attendance. She leaned back, eyes fixed. The next move would not be fought in whispers. It would be on record. Sometimes justice is just a mirror, held up in the brightest room. The lights in the Clearwell boardroom weren't particularly bright that morning, but the projector was. It cast everything. Every file, every pixel of metadata, every clipped audio file, onto a white wall that had once only reflected names like executive, preferred, and legacy. Not today. I stood before the board with steady hands. No sweat, no apology in my voice. I began not with a speech, but with a simple tap on the keyboard. Slide 1, the email thread, dated 3 months ago, directing my removal from the internal contributor logs. Slide 2, the forwarded confirmation from HR, which never reached me. Slide 3, audio, Trent admitting Madison's list, and how no one dared challenge it. No one interrupted me. Madison sat across the table, arms folded tightly, jaw clenched. She hadn't spoken since I walked in. Vanessa Kim leaned forward, placing a thin file on the table. "This is the draft directive from March," she said, voice calm. "It includes internal notes to IT asking to mask all code entries associated with user C Hayes 01. Timestamps were to be resynced to later contributor IDs." I didn't have to say anything. The board leaned in, murmurs spreading like ripples. Daniel sat at the end of the table, not aligned with me or with Madison, neutral as he had promised. But I felt his gaze when the document reached him. He didn't blink. When the final slide disappeared, he cleared his throat. "Ms. Hayes," he said, not looking at Madison, "before the board votes, is there anything you'd like to say?" Madison rose, slow and deliberate. This is being taken out of context. Streamlining team input is standard. I never intended to erase anyone's work." She looked at me, and for a moment, I saw something behind the rehearsed defense. Not guilt, Madison never did guilt, but fatigue. The kind that comes when your strategy doesn't play out. I said nothing. Daniel turned to the rest of the room. "All in favor of formal suspension from executive duties pending full review?" Hands rose, one by one, then all at once. "And Ms. Charlotte Hayes," Vanessa said, "we'd like to invite you to join our global strategy project as lead analyst and co-designer." I didn't smile. Not then. I nodded once. Later, I walked down the long hallway, not looking back. Daniel caught up beside me without a word. "You didn't need me to fight for you," he said after a moment. "No," I replied. "But it's good to know who would've." Sunlight cut across the marble floor ahead of us. For the first time in years, I stepped into it without wondering if someone would close the door behind me. This time, I had brought the key. I didn't walk into that building for revenge. I walked in for clarity, for the chance to reclaim a name they tried so hard to erase. Every step through the marble halls, every breath I took sitting across from people who had once looked through me, it all burned. But it burned clean. No screaming, no chaos. Just facts. Evidence. Timelines. They tried to bury me in silence, but they forgot one thing. I remembered where every shovel landed. There was a moment, as the final vote was cast and her name was suspended, when I looked at Madison. Not in triumph, but in recognition. We were made of the same ambition, perhaps, but I had chosen to build with mine, while she had chosen to steal with hers. The spotlight she chased all her life finally found her. But it didn't shine. It exposed. As I left the room, I didn't feel bigger than them. I just felt exactly the size I had always been. unapologetically present. Not their version of me, mine, the version they tried to edit out. I thought about my late father and the way he used to remind me, you don't have to fight dirty, but you do have to know how they fight. And he was right. You can't beat someone at their game without understanding their playbook. But once you do, you don't have to stoop. You just have to show up, unshaken. And that's what I did. There's a quiet kind of justice that doesn't shout. It simply arrives, undeniable. Charlotte Hayes never set out to destroy anyone. She only asked to be seen, to be remembered for what she built, not for what they tried to steal. But when truth is met with denial, and dignity with deception, even the quietest voice must rise. Her journey is not just a tale of personal redemption. It is a blueprint, a reminder that betrayal does not mean defeat, and that erasure, no matter how meticulous, cannot withstand the weight of evidence. When the system tried to erase her, she documented everything. When the whispers turned into slander, she answered with receipts. And when they weaponized silence, she brought her own microphone. Justice, in its purest form, doesn't demand revenge. It simply requires that the truth be seen in full light. And once that light is on, no shadow, no matter how strategic, can hold. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, justice may arrive late. But when it plays, it resonates through every room that once tried to pretend it wasn't needed. Sometimes the fiercest resistance comes not from rage, but from composure. From showing up, prepared, precise, and unwilling to disappear again. Perhaps that's the real victory, not in making others fall, but in refusing to vanish when they push you out of frame. And in the end, the lesson lingers. No wall of lies can stand forever against the tide of truth. They thought deleting my name would delete the story. But the story didn't need their approval. It had timestamps. I didn't ruin anyone's career. I just pressed play. If you've ever been erased, underestimated, or told to wait your turn, let this be a reminder. Truth doesn't shout. But when it speaks, it leaves no room for denial. Drop a comment if you've ever been sidelined, not because you weren't good enough, but because someone else needed the spotlight more than the truth. And if this story resonates with you, share it. Not for revenge, for recognition. Because some of us don't fight to win. We fight to be seen. Clearly, finally, and without apology. Thank you for staying until the very end of this story. If you're reading these words, it means you didn't just watch a video. You chose to listen, chose to stay, chose to step into the quiet corners that many of us have hidden away for years. Today's story wasn't just about a woman named Charlotte. It wasn't just about an empty chair in a conference room, a deleted email, or a voice memo carefully saved. It was about so many of us. Those who have been told we were not the right fit, not the right time, or simply left off a list on purpose. Maybe you've been the one ignored when you spoke up. Maybe you've swallowed anger to avoid being labeled too emotional. Maybe you've walked out of a room no one noticed you'd been in. If so, I hope the story gave voice to a feeling you've carried and never had the space to name. This channel isn't here to tell perfect stories. We tell the truth. The kind of truth that doesn't always end neatly, but always leads to clarity. Because we believe justice doesn't need a spotlight. It just needs light. And once truth is seen, it can never be erased a second time. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for staying even when it was uncomfortable. Thank you for choosing to stay when scrolling away would have been easier. You, the one still here reading, are the reason we keep telling these stories. If today's story touched something inside you, I hope you know. You're not alone. And you don't have to be loud to be heard. You just have to hold the truth. Long enough, carefully enough, and it will speak. We'll be right here, telling the stories someone once tried to make disappear. If you'd like to walk this path with us, hit subscribe, not for numbers, but so no one has to carry the truth alone ever again. Once more, thank you for listening, for believing, for seeing. See you in the next story, where silence isn't the ending, but the beginning of a voice finally rising.